Today we're gonna take a look at some reverse lights and try and troubleshoot why they're not working. So what I'm actually doing is I'm trying to figure out what's not working. So we have our reverse lights here, and this is a schematic I downloaded off Google. And if we trace that back, there's a reverse light switch here. So that's on the shifter. So odds are that's not making connection. If I trace this back further, I got an inline fuse, and I go back even further, I have the number 1 fuse. So I'm going to check all of these points from this relay to this fuse here to the switch, and see if I can find out where I'm losing my voltage. All right, whenever you're doing electrical work, make sure you always disconnect the battery. So I started disconnecting and removing some things, and I found this in the shifter area. So we're gonna have to look at this mess a little closer and try and figure out what's going on. Okay, fast forward a bit. Got a probe on this switch here. If I touch the reverse side, you can hear a beep. So that's hooked up to the reverse light. When I hook up to this side of the reverse switch, when I put it in reverse, it should activate, and it doesn't. If I pull this all the way back and get my finger back here, and if I press it with my finger, I can get it to have connectivity. So this switch is out of adjustment. So I'm going to see if I could take it out and possibly clean it up and readjust it. So just a quick tech tip. This is kind of in a recessed area. It's hard to get at it. Can't get it with a regular screwdriver to disconnect the wires. I'd have to take most of the console apart. Rather than do that, you can take some of your universal bits, and they're all 1/4-inch drive. So if you don't have a magnetic driver, just take a piece of electrical tape. You can go ahead and you can tape your bit into it, and then you can get at it with a socket, and you can spin your screw that way. Saves you a lot of time. Okay, we got our switch all cleaned up. I got the probes locked in, and all I've been doing is just cleaning it with a little contact cleaner until I get continuity on the switch. And there's actually a lot of stuff I cleaned out of here. Broken wires, all kinds of junk. So now I got it so it just barely takes a little bit of pressure to push that switch in. Now let's grease it. So we know that plunger is going to be making contact, but it's internal to the switch. So what you could try to do, you could try to get some of this grease down inside the body of the switch, and if you get lucky, you can force it down in there. See, just that little bit, and already I'm getting better contact. So we're going to try and pack this thing full of grease like you would a wheel bearing to make sure that I get all the dielectric down in there. And just as a reminder, like, I flooded this switch with contact cleaner, so that's where all that black stuff came out of. But it's working pretty good. I can actually hear it click. So it's making contact. Okay, we got this thing packed full of grease, and the way you can tell is when you go to push this switch, you should see it ooze back out ever so slightly. See that? See that little movement there? That means it's fully packed, and this is just the travel on a spring. I'm not actually making contact with the switch. But once I get it packed, just that little bit of pressure, I got contact. So we're gonna put this switch back in and see if the reverse lights work. Okay, mounted back in the car, and I got the meter hooked up, so when I move it into reverse, you can see it presses the switch in, but it's not enough to activate it. This dial here is actually plastic, and you can see it's not quite centered. So over time, this plastic has fatigued. If I just take my finger and I just push it in slightly so it's aligned, it makes contact. So I got to find a way to push this dial back so it's in alignment. And this is actually the inhibitor switch. This is worn. You can kind of see there's an angle here. We've had trouble with this car starting from time to time. You almost had to hold the shifter to the left sometimes, and that's because this inhibitor switch was riding. So figured out that issue as well. So let's see if we can reinforce this guy.